All right. What do we got here? Let's talk about fear. If we think about creating the life or the business or the relationship that we really want, often we can see that what's holding us back is fear. Makes sense? In other words, we're not getting what we want because we don't want to do the stuff that scares us. We're scared we're going to be uncomfortable. We're scared we're going to risk our money or energy or time, or we're scared we're going to do something that's going to have us feel rejected or look like a loser or a failure, a moron. So how often, though, do we challenge our fears? How often do we really take the time to look these assumptions in the eye? And through experience, I've found it's really helpful to really understand how fear shows up in our minds so that we don't let a speed bump turn into a wall. But first, in case you don't know who I am, I'm Tripp Lanier. I host The New Man, but more importantly, I've been a professional coach now for about 15 years. And this means I've spent thousands of hours helping guys figure out how to do the work that will put their lives and their relationships and their professions on a better trajectory. And I've been fortunate enough to coach everyone from Navy SEALs to best-selling authors to fancy pants executives to that guy who lives right up the street from you. So let's get back to this topic of doing the stuff that scares us so that we can experience greater freedom, aliveness, love, and peace. When we're in the creative process and we're looking at the next scary step, it's helpful to understand what we're really facing. Often, this is where we drain ourselves and we get stuck because we can only see our challenge from one perspective instead of three. So let's break down our challenge into its three main parts. The first part happens before we take the scary step. And this phase is the worry and the anxiety and the dread and the avoidance. And you can bet big money that this is usually the worst part of the entire process. Even though no action has been taken yet, even though we haven't actually stepped into the challenge, this is where we spend so much of our time and energy getting wrapped around the axle, worrying about what might happen. And like a scared child out there frozen on the end of a diving board, we're usually just wrapped up in a state of anxiety. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I should do. We toil, we stay up late and stare at the ceiling. That's an awful place to be. We can spend months or years or decades frozen in this place of fearful avoidance. The second part is when we get into action. This happens when we engage our challenge. And weirdly enough, when we're engaging our challenge, we don't usually feel the fear anymore. If anything, we begin to experience a sense of excitement, some aliveness. If our challenge and our skill levels are aligned, we may even begin to experience flow. While we're in the act of creating, we're focused on the challenge itself. And like the kid who just stepped off of the diving board and into the air, in that moment, we don't have the space to be freaked out about anything. We're not worrying about the future or dreading this or that because we're engaged in the present moment. And then the third part is what happens after we take action. This is where we usually experience peace and freedom and aliveness. We're transformed as a result of going through our challenge. We're no longer that scared, frozen kid who's stuck there imagining all of the worst case scenarios because we've stepped across a threshold. We've gone through the experience. And at the minimum, we're simply relieved to be done with this thing. But most likely, we're already running to get back in line so we can jump off the diving board again. Bottom line, when we're facing a scary challenge, we can remember that the worst part of the whole process isn't actually doing it. It's the time we spend worrying and avoiding our challenge. We don't have to let our fear get us stuck in that miserable place. We don't even have to believe what our fears tell us. We don't have to buy into the theory that just because that first part sucks, then that means the whole thing is going to suck. And if we review our previous experiences, then we can see that waiting to do something feels quite different than the experience of actually doing it. We can remember the gazillions of times that we did scary stuff that ultimately became no big deal. I hope this has been helpful for you. This idea is a short excerpt from the book I'll be publishing soon. If you haven't done so already, be sure to sign up for the mailing list at thenewmanpodcast.com so you can get even more value from the New Man Podcast. Best to you, and thanks so much for listening.